Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Motorsports Over Chai. We all are back, the same gang Aman, Goresh, Inesh, and Rod. And today we're going to talk about the Austin GP that just happened Sunday. And I guess last week when I said that I find Austin GP pretty interesting, some of you might have disagreed with me, but I guess this GP might have changed your mind. I guess we're gonna start with talking about how Max Verstappen's race happened from practice session one to the whole race. I personally feel that his qualifying and overthrew his race, he was pretty much untouchable. Anyone else would like to add on it?
I would like to add on it. I would say that Max Verstappen was not untouchable this weekend because he didn't top all the practice sessions, the qualifying sessions, and the race. I mean, he did top qualifying and the race, but his Q3 lap, the second run, I think that was a little bit um, I'd say it was a little bit glitchy for him because he wasn't able to get the purple sectors or at least green sectors in the
Hmm.
first and the second sector. But the third sector was just spot on. He just got it, and that was the I guess the crucial factor that kept him ahead of Lando Norris. That was in P2, which was a shocker. Not that such a great of shocker,
Correct, correct.
but yeah, I mean, McLaren have had a great performance all 2021, and they have been just at the right place at the right time to capitalize. And yeah,
Yeah,
Lando
I
Norris
mean,
was just
I think Lando Norris got a very good toe from Max Verstappen. That is one highlight. He was right behind Max and he was setting the purple sectors. So that toe helped him a lot in his Q2. I mean, sorry, P2 lap. So that's what one thing. I think on pure pace related thing, McLaren may be behind Mercedes right now, but he got a toe, so he was P2.
McLaren maybe behind Mercedes,
Definitely on.
maybe behind
Yeah, go on,
Mercedes.
Goresh.
McLaren may be behind Mercedes on traditional race circuits, but I guess that when it's a street circuit, McLaren have that edge because Mercedes' car is a low rake philosophy, and that just does not work out for Mercedes and in their way.
When it comes to street circuits, there's one more team that really comes out again, which is
Ferrari,
Ferrari.
Ferrari, yeah.
I was really sad when I saw Singapore go away because I was really having big expectations from Singapore as well. But nonetheless, and like you said about Max Verstappen's pace through all the practice sessions and qualifying, a part of me kind of felt that maybe he was holding back uh, when it came to 100% pushing himself. This is something that I personally felt. I guess he could have done even a better job at what.
So, what I think with the facts that I have gathered is that Max Verstappen had a braking issue at the Australian Grand Prix. So you might have watched F1's YouTube video about the braking issue, F1 technicals, that Max Verstappen had a braking issue throughout the race,
Hmm,
and those curbs just move the components of the car massively, and maybe that's what
sausage
Max.
curves, yeah.
No, not the sausage curves, just the normal red and white curves. They move the components in the car massively,
Okay.
and those air gaps are created between the pads and the pistons and the pads, which make the braking, I don't know, very, very unpredictable because you might hit on the brakes and the car might just not stop, or you might hit on the brakes and the tires may lock up. But I guess Max was throughout the practice sessions, he was testing different things, or Red Bull might have changed something in the brake pistons and the brake pads. They might have added that spring which keeps the brake pistons touched up firm against the pads. And I think that's why Max had that. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna say moment on the radio in one of the practice sessions when he slowed down out of the Remus corner, turn three, and maybe that's what might have been holding him back. And I don't know, when qualifying, it's just a pure on one lap pace, and that might have also been an issue. That might have been an issue throughout Q3, the second run, because in qualifying you just push no matter what. Even if you make a tiny error, you push for the next corner, next.
Hmm.
You try and capitalize anything that is in your way, and that might have also been a small issue because Max Verstappen could not set those purple sectors for sector one and sector two, but was able to do it for third. So he might have actually got the grips on the brakes if there was a brake issue. And yeah, I mean, Max Verstappen has been really calm, and we've said that in numerous times. And yeah, but his
Hmm.
calm
Yeah.
was lost in one of the practice sessions where he had the I'm not gonna say moment on the radio. So maybe yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see more of this. Maybe we won't. But yeah,
I guess with the 32-point lead that Max has currently right now, I guess he has gathered a decent amount of breathing space that is going to make him more comfortable and calm, as we have talked about. But the exactly opposite thing is going to happen to Lewis Hamilton at the same time.
Let
Over
me
at Mercedes is going to be
uh,
this uncomfortable air.
let me jump in, and I would like to contradict on one of your point. Max Verstappen should not even like think about slowing down or taking break or breathing space like that. No, no, no. If he's on the pace, if he is on the money right now, he should full send it every race, every time. If he like gives one silly like I I I touch wood, it won't it should not happen, but right now Max Verstappen is leading the championship. Red Bull is leading the championship. He has a grip, he has the momentum behind it. He should not let that go. That's one
Oh,
thing
I
would
completely agree. I completely agree to that. But with this
because
gap of,
see the
yeah, yeah, go
gap
on.
of see I'll tell you a thing. If I don't know if you remember this or not, but in 2010, Fernando had 15-point lead in the last race. Vettel overdid that. Vettel overcome that 15-point lead in the last race. Made there is 25 points on the grab. You see, I know it's 32 points right now. It might increase, it might decrease. I don't know
Hmm.
what future holds. But Max Verstappen should not just be calm. I know he's calm in a good way, but he should not be like, okay, it's
He should
happening.
not
I'm
ease
very
out. Yes,
Yeah. He
correct. I
should not
agree.
ease out.
Hmm.
I don't think that would
Because
happen. I don't think that's very unlikely because under Dr. Helmut Marko, he's not gonna uh, just ease out. He's gonna be relentless
Yeah,
for the rest of the season. I mean, I'm just waiting for the Belgian Grand Prix. I want to see the Red Bull cars on the
on the
straight,
camel
on the
straight.
Camel Straight. I just want to see it. I just want to
Dude,
see it after the race start. I just don't know what the future holds, but let's see. And
is
like
there is
Aman
there
said,
any is there any break between the races? Like
no, I
I
don't
don't
think so. I don't think so. In the calendar, there is
there
no
is
break because Belgian Grand Prix for the Belgian Grand Prix is scheduled for late in the August, and
somewhere around that time, yes.
yeah, late in August, and the next Grand Prix is set right in September first week. So I don't think there's a huge break.
I guess we are having our next Grand Prix as British Grand Prix, which is happening on 16th, correct?
Yep, yep. That
yes,
that also brings the sprint qualifying into place. That the
Oh
sprint race
yes,
that
British Grand Prix does have the sprint qualifying. Yes, yes.
yeah. So
Sprint
the
races. That's
yeah
gonna
the
be
qua
interesting to watch as well.
yeah that's gonna be super interesting because after there like I've been seeing on Instagram, three teams might miss one practice session at the British Grand Prix because they will have to keep changing components, and one race distance is around 306 kilometers, so they will have to double it up because they will also have qualifying and the sprint race. So they will have to make sure their
Hmm.
components last throughout the weekend. And I think when it comes to reliability, Mercedes is the best out there. There is no other team that can beat Mercedes in terms of reliability because they have, I mean, German engineering. You can't just beat that. No one can beat
Correct,
German
correct.
engineering, and Mercedes has the best reliability out there, and they might be able to make their engines, their gearbox, their every little component last for the whole weekend. And let's see what Red Bull comes up with. If they are one of the teams that missed the practice sessions, it might be on the downside for them. But I don't think they'll be one of the teams because, according to what I have read and I've seen, I
It's
guess it was
Aston Martin,
McLaren,
it's Alpine,
McLaren, Alpine, and
Aston
Aston
Martin.
Martin. Yeah, and Aston Martin also requested Mercedes that can they get their gearboxes as well, but Mercedes refused. So let's see how that plays out.
A
Gearbox
part of
for
me feels like
gearbox for sprint qualifying.
No, 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 for the whole weekend because
Okay, for the whole weekend.
after the sprint qualifying, the car is in park for me. You can't make any changes on the car unless you're cooling the car. Nothing more than that.
okay. When it comes to sprint quali, I guess there are two, three teams who might show a very confident and a very positive pace. I think one of them has got to be Alpha Tauri, the other one being McLaren, and the other one being Ferrari. I think these three teams can be really promising when it comes to sprint quali.
Man, I just some I like I was watching the both Austrian GP, like the highlights also and on live also, and oh my God, what have Ferrari done? Like I mean, from the being part of a meme culture, and now they're really showing pace on, like, Charles Leclerc collecting front wings again. Last, I think yesterday, he was like almost attacking every corner. Sergio Perez, he was attacking. Then he was like, I don't know what's happened in Ferrari, but oh my God, that's something good has happened in Ferrari.
But isn't that what we want to see? Like hard races, aggressive drivers.
Yeah, I am not
We want to
denying.
see that. We want to see that. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm not
So,
denying
I
the
mean,
fact.
Sergio
in
Perez's
my opinion,
battles.
Leclerc made the race actually interesting.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
give
yeah,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll give that to Charles Leclerc. I'll give that to
but
Charles
but
Leclerc.
but while he made the race interesting, it was, very, I'd say, not clean and
Amateur.
like yeah, I mean, not immature, but not just a clean overtaking, right? The way Alonso and Russell fought,
Oh my God,
that
that was
was
good. Huh?
clean. That was clean because when they were heading up to turn 4, Alonso just took the inside line and made it stick, and Russell moved past so quickly. I mean, it was in a blink of an eye. I mean, within a blink of an eye, Russell moved past to over to the left and was on the outside. But then, I mean, he lost his first points, and Alonso and Vettel were pretty gutted about it. But yeah, I
When
mean,
it comes to
luckily,
turn four of this track, I think any car that is on the inside line, that is actually following the racing line, is always at an advantage because you cannot completely go completely go on the outside because of the gravel, and then on the inside you're going to lose a lot of grip.
I don't think so. The racing line, I mean, when you're racing, the racing line is not that of a benefit. You have to, in turn 4, I'm just speaking in context of turn 4, you have to be in the middle, and that might actually help you keep the position throughout the lap.
I think it was last year, but someone have pulled off a move over at turn 4 on the outside. I think it was Perez or someone, but I think I've seen that someone pull off a move on the outside of turn 4.
Yeah, someone did, and see, you can pull out. You can go round the outside out of turn four, but you need to have little confidence in the other driver that he would
Of
not
course, of
push
course.
you off, like Russell and
Correct.
Alonso.
Mm.
I give it to Russell and Alonso because that was clean, that was interesting. it was we were on the edge of our seat, and credits to George Russell that he kept a two-time world champion behind for a good amount of laps. If he can
Correct,
hold,
correct.
there the points were on the grab, but you cannot just keep a four-time world champion and a pretty fast car behind you for that much time. Once you are in the slipstream, you gonna enable the DRS and just gonna fly
I
away.
mean, Russell must have been pulling off quali laps after quali laps to keep
Oh my
Alonso
god,
behind.
yes, yes, yes. That was one heck of a job, man.
But then again, since we were comparing Leclerc with Alonso, look at the experience Alonso has. So Alonso uh, has a lot more experience, so he can judge his moves better than Leclerc. And Leclerc was also like infuriated a little bit with Checo's moves,
S-
so
I
Hmm.
okay.
that may
That's
have.
I have a very unpopular opinion about this. Okay, I don't know if you guys might support or not, but sometimes I feel Charles Leclerc. I I don't know how to say this, but that Ferrari seat and that Ferrari golden boy and that thing has gone into his mind, and he is so much like I just want to go. I just want to win races. I just want this on that time, and he's so much into the moment that he makes mistake, that he's bound to make mistakes, either taking front wing or Perez incident or Turkey podium which he completely lost it when he was trying to get V2, or there are some times when he is right at the moment and then he loses his mind and just goes out of the points contention or sometimes podium contention,
So you're trying to say he pushes too hard at times,
which is unnecessary, which
which
is
is
unnecessary,
unnecessary. Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
see, even Max push, okay, but Max holds back as well. Max and
Correct, correct.
I'll tell you on
A very good.
clean racing incident. Max and Lewis, I don't know which interview or who said it, but they both know they won't crash because they respect each other, and someone would back off a little just to
Hmm.
save
Hmm.
the race at that point of time. So that's good thing.
It's such a thing in which you are pushing as well, and as well as you are respecting your own particular limits. I've seen this in Lando, even in the last race and this race as well. He was a contender for the top five easy, and respecting with what the teams did, like the team's opinion about your P5 is a more aspiring position, that it's a more possible position to fight for, and he eventually lands up to P3. That shows that he can respect his own limits as well as he can push as well.
We were talking about Silverstone and sprint qualies. So I think Goresh should at least like tell everyone what this new format in Formula One is, this sprint format.
Okay, so sprint qualifying is basically a philosophy from Formula 2 races, which is like Formula 2 has sprint races and feature races. So, sprint races are for a short amount of time, less laps, and that is a philosophy that F1 has also adapted just for a few circuits for 2021 season. And this race sprint qualifying will just basically be over 100 kilometers, and which would last around 25 to 30 minutes. And it is a short, fast-paced race, and like I'd say like a 2020 match, while the F1 Grand Prix being a test match, and the drivers would be racing flat out from start to finish without the need to pit, which would be an advantage in a few drivers, and the points would be awarded only to the top three finishers, three for the winner. I mean, three for first, two for second, and one for the third. And there won't be a podium ceremony, and that honor would only remain to the Grand Prix. and the winner will get a trophy in Parc Ferme. And yeah, it would be similar to the pole position trophy that they currently get. And the finishing order of the race will define the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix, the where the traditional format remains unchanged. And the
I'd like to correct Goresh. Sprint qualifyings are T20 matches. Formula One Grand Prix are ODI, and 24-hour of Le Mans is Test match. So
oh
in
yeah,
that
right. I
context,
mean, I didn't factor it correctly when I was talking
Hmm.
about
That seems like a
cricket
better
and
analogy.
motorsports. Yeah, yeah. That seems, of course, that is a better analogy. Okay, so moving on, the next point that interested me throughout the weekend was, are McLaren better than the best of the rest? Because certainly they have the pace. With Lando Norris, they can achieve, I don't know, multiple podiums this season. How many has he gotten this season? Monaco, I can remember one. Austria, I can remember one.
Imola.
Uh, Imola, yes, Imola. So
Imola.
three this season. Three is this season, and I think they are better than the best of the rest, and they'd be
Exactly.
fast.
Lando was half a tenth of a second behind Max in the last qualifying. Half
Yeah,
a tenth of a second
that is because of the toe
behind
he got.
Max. He beat the Mercedes, who have the same engine, just a better chassis. He beat them for one reason or another, maybe because it was a toe, maybe some other reason. It doesn't matter. He was half a tenth behind Max Verstappen. That's proper pace, and that's
What
hopefully a
what
future world champion in the league.
I'm sorry, Goresh, for the next sentence. I know you're gonna be furious with me, but what Lando Norris is doing right now with McLaren is what Max Verstappen did with Red Bull Racing for 2018. No, for 2019. He is carrying that one team alone on his back right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know
I mean,
that. I know that. I
see,
know that. And being a Daniel Ricciardo fan, I'm not hurt. Daniel Ricciardo is new to the team. He'll get to the grips with the McLaren 35M. I'm just not so worried about him right now because he knows where he needs to perform and he will eventually. I know that. And I mean, Lando is of course carrying the team. It's
but
I
but what?
have I have had a hard time accepting that fact, but I did it last week. And yeah, I mean,
But
let's
don't you
see
think
what
when you
happens.
see Daniel Ricciardo in context to other drivers who changed the team, almost everyone got either on the podium or they have won for that. And Ricardo is not. Did Ricardo get a top five? I'm not. I'm not dissing Ricardo, but did he get a top five? Like, what's his highest point finish right now?
P6 at the Spanish
P
Grand Prix.
P6. I
I
mean,
kind of feel like Ricardo does a good job on Sundays, but when it comes
Yeah,
to qualifying, that is where
exactly.
his setup is compromised.
I mean, with the Red Bull, Daniel Ricciardo today might have won the championship. But I mean, that word is might, and he left the team on his own terms. But
what
yeah,
Red Bull package have today? You mean to say?
yeah, with the package
Yes,
that they have today, if he would have
definitely,
stayed,
definitely,
because I mean, the
definitely.
Red Bull car is just so different than the whole grid's car. They have a very different
Right now,
philosophy. They have a very different philosophy. You can see the way Red Bull management versus Mercedes management is. I mean, when Mercedes is at the top at their 100%, they are going to be relentless throughout the season. But when Red Bull is at the top, they are going to be twice relentless. I mean, and that might get boring for some of y'all, but it is fun to watch. It is fun to
No,
watch. The Seb
yeah,
era was
definitely with
Seb's
Mercedes
era.
fighting as well, it is definitely fun to watch.
Yeah, Seb's
And
era
with a
was the
change of
best.
dominance, it's gonna be fun to watch for at least a year or so.
So
I
yeah, moving
see.
on
I
back to Daniel Ricciardo. Moving on back to Daniel Ricciardo, I would like to say that Vettel got a podium. Yeah, he got a podium with Aston Martin in Baku. Perez won in Baku with his new team. Alonso had few points finishes, but let's see
let's
maybe
not
because
compare. Let's
I
not
mean
compare Alonso because he didn't change the team. He came back.
Yeah,
I'm comparing Ricardo, Vettel, Sainz, and Perez. These four drivers.
Sainz is
Sainz
one
got
of
a podium.
the really great drivers out there. Like,
Correct,
I don't
correct.
know, I
He's
don't
a very
know.
promising driver.
Very,
I'll
very
say this.
promising
I'll
driver.
say this. See, I'm not a big Carlos fan, but he's criminally underrated amongst other drivers.
He's
Let me
very
say
Oh
this.
yes,
underrated.
I agree.
He's very
I agree.
Very
underrated.
He's very
the
underrated.
the
Correct.
way he adapted to Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, man, he's on the pace, man.
Definitely, he
What he has
adapts really.
2 years contract. He has 2 years contract. He will outperform Charles Leclerc next year. That's my word. Big bold statement.
Had he been in McLaren this year,
Oh my
He
God,
might
he
have
would have
won.
championship,
He
been
might have
like
won.
McLaren
championship,
would have been on podium. Seriously, would have been
championship,
crushing
Not
it.
dude.
podiums, they would have been on the top shelf of podiums. I mean, when
At least P3 easy, easy P3.
P2 easy, I'd say, because Carlos Sainz had a really great philosophy with the McLaren car, and those two were like the
Hmm.
things that clicked together, and that clicked. And McLaren and Sainz had a really great relationship. If Sainz was at McLaren, I mean, everything in the world of motorsport rests on ifs and
If
maybes.
If correct.
If McLaren and Sainz had continued for this year, Sainz would have gotten his first win. I'm
I think
101% sure of that.
if Sainz stayed at McLaren, it would be a three-way battle for the championship, maybe.
It could have been, but
It could
at
have been maybe.
it could have been because
But
McLaren are slow on the traditional race circuits. They are just that bit slower than Mercedes. But if they have, I mean, if the driver is very experienced and can actually outperform Mercedes, then I don't know, a three-way battle would have been much more interesting than this two-way battle.
Three-way, as in 182 for I don't remember the points. 182 for Max, 150 for Lewis, and maybe somewhere Sainz would be like 100 or 20,
130, 140,
120,
somewhere
140.
around that point. Because with the pace that Lando has right now, and considering how well Sainz does adapt it to his new teams, I mean,
I'd like to add on the fact that Sainz has adapted really greatly with his new team is because Sainz also has a bit of an engineering background, which sets him apart from the other drivers, and that is what
hmm,
might have given him the chance to understand the car better. I mean, it's over the season, it's always about understanding the car, because if you understand the car in the first race, it might not go the same way as you plan it out for the next three races,
And
because
if you
there is
and
there's always a
continue.
balance. I'm sorry, amount to cut you off there. There's always a balance of street circuits, traditional circuits, power circuits, technical circuits, and it might not pan out the same way, but science is making it work through the street circuit to the traditional circuit and back to tactical circuit. I think he might make it work. Yeah, over to you, man. You were saying.
And plus Carl Sainz had good amount of testing laps. He had good amount of laps in Fiorano, Ferrari 21H, if I'm not wrong.
Your voice just cut off there, man. If you could just repeat.
As I was saying, Carlos Sainz had a great amount of testing laps in Bahrain. He had a good amount of test laps in Fiorano, Italy, on Ferrari's private test track with the SF71H, which is 2018 championship car. And of course, the engineering background, and the more you change the teams, the adaptability helps you to do that. And he's doing great, I think so. I think he's somewhere bit on the championship standings. He's, I think, near Charles Leclerc. I think so.
I think that he's above Charles Leclerc in this terms, because Charles Leclerc was behind Daniel Ricciardo for 5 to 6 laps, and he could not overtake Daniel Ricciardo. And I mean, Charles Leclerc was ever so close at turn 4, and could almost make that move stick, but was just that tinge bit of downforce, running low on downforce, which pulled him a little back. But Sainz was able to do it, maybe because of the fact that Daniel's tires were dying. I mean, Sainz has been at the right place at the right time in the 2021 season. You could see that at Monaco. Uh, and Sainz and McLaren as a team have been at the right place at the right time, excluding, of course, Daniel Ricciardo, because he's just been getting to the grips with the McLaren 35M. Yeah, I mean, it hurts to say that as a Daniel Ricciardo fan. It hurts to say
But
that.
when you compare it, Daniel, with the other drivers, comparatively, he's taking a longer
He's taking a
time
longer
span
time
to
to
get on the
adjust.
grid. Yeah, I
It
mean, I
seems
see.
pretty odd that drivers such as Ricardo, who has so many years of experience on his back, is taking this much time to adapt.
See,
I mean, it's
we
hard for
all
me to understand why is this happening because I'm myself a Ricardo fan, but well, I can't say a lot on that. I just hope he gets back his pace because he has been performing well on Sunday since the past 2 3 races.
see, I'll I'll say this, okay? I have no shame in admitting that in 2014, Daniel Ricciardo just, what's the great word? Destroyed Sebastian Vettel, who was a four-time world champion, and he could have won the championship in 2014 if Mercedes were not there. If Mercedes were
I don't think
no
so. No, 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 no. I don't think so.
2014.
No, because he just won 3 races, and those were, I mean, in a span of 6 races, he won 3 races and had a multiple run of podiums. But I don't think the Red Bull car in 2014 was a championship worthy car because it was just dependent on those power circuits and just a little bit at those technical circuits, which made him get the win at Hungary, Canada, and Belgium. So, I mean, I don't think he could have won it entirely in 2014, but I would say that 2016 is where he could have capitalized because Hamilton was breaking in 2016. Under Nico Rosberg's dominance, Hamilton was breaking in 2016, and Ricciardo had really great races, and he was right there the whole season, and he could have done it. But then Monaco was a very hurtful race for him. Yeah, and when he tried to retake the lead, you saw what Hamilton did and didn't get a penalty
Of
for it.
course.
But I mean, Sebastian Vettel in 2019 got a penalty at the Canadian GP. The FIA being ambiguous as always.
I I hate to say this, but I think Daniel Ricciardo will be in that list with the great calibers and great amount of talent, but without a world championship point, without a world drivers championship, maybe like I don't know.
It'll change. It'll change. Don't worry. It'll change. I have hope. I have hope. I have hope.
Well,
I
hope is
was
the best thing we can do.
Yeah, yeah. Hope is the best thing we can rest our hopes on. That was a very weird
that
sentence.
that was good, Rod.
But yeah, I guess let's move on to the penalties that happened throughout the Austrian GP. And it
Excuse
was
me,
quite of a
guys.
shocker. It was quite of a shocker that nobody respected the double waved yellows in the last lap. And Nicholas Latifi and Nikita Mazepin, they both got a 30-second time penalty that was added to their race time. And
Which is
yeah,
useless.
it was a shocker that they didn't respect the double waved yellows. And one other incident that stood out was when Kimi Raikkonen just went, I'd say he rammed into the
Inside
back of
Sebastian
Vettel.
Vettel.
Yeah, that was, I'd say, for Kimi's experience, not
Very
I
hard
didn't
hitting.
I I didn't expect it, and it was an ouch for me, ouch moment for me because two of my two of my top five drivers crashing into each other was not so good. And Kimi Raikkonen though
To
got a
watch.
20-second time penalty added to his race time, and Sergio Perez also got a few penalties. a few penalties, a handful of penalties where he pushed Charles Leclerc off out into the gravel out of turn 4 and out of turn 5, which was, I don't know, I'd say one of it was justified, out of turn 5 was justified, but out of turn 4 was not justified because Leclerc was, I'd say, ambitious over there, and Perez gave him that
I will
little bit
disagree
of
with you on
space.
this one,
Oh, I mean,
because
why not?
if you look at the onboard of Leclerc, as they're approaching the corner, like mid corner, you can actually see Leclerc is ahead of Perez. So Perez must have seen him beside him. So if the car is ahead, you're supposed to leave him a bit of space. If they're side by side or maybe a little bit behind, you can still argue that no, I was following the racing line and I didn't see him. But Leclerc mid corner was ahead. So I think it deserved a little bit more space. Also, there was contact between Leclerc and Perez in turn 4, whereas
There was
for
wheel
the
banging.
Perez,
The right
yeah,
front
that
of
still counts as
Leclerc,
contact.
yeah, that still counts as contact. There was contact with the right front of Leclerc and left front of Perez. Um, I'd say I disagree with you, Rod, on that one because Perez left him, I'd say, a little bit of space, but not enough. That one car length was there, I'd say. But Leclerc was over ambitious and he went off. He went off. And he went off. He didn't have the downforce, he went off.
Leclerc was driving like a touring car driver. Those guys just banging into each other
Yeah,
all the time
yeah,
in the
yeah,
small
yeah,
cars.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
forgot that he was in a Formula race for a while, but I'll be honest, it was entertaining to watch. I mean, you don't often see such passes and such ambitious moves in F1. It's always like those DRS passes. We don't see
Yeah,
essentially
you don't see
rubber
that
balls.
in the turbo hybrid era. You don't see that.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's just
It
DRS. You
reminded
come
me a bit of
you're
Montoya.
yeah, Montoya. I mean, I just wish that he had a second chance at F1, but I guess fate that pans out.
Juan Pablo Montoya, I think, was the guy who can beat Michael Schumacher if given a right amount of package under him. Oh my God, I he was intelligent, he was good with the mouth, he was sometimes cocky. He would give it back to Michael on that particular race itself. Oh my, Montoya was real gangsta, I would say. Man,
Exactly. If we talk about drivers, like say, like you mentioned, Daniel Ricciardo, who you think are worthy of a world championship but couldn't achieve one. I think in the modern generation, Montoya would top that list because he was worthy of a championship,
Massa.
especially in
True,
2003.
true.
Then
Massa as well. Massa
mid-season,
as well.
yes, yes. I think these guys would top that list in the modern generation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. There are many drivers who deserve a world championship, but was denied because of the car, or maybe someone else's car, I would say. But yeah,
But hey, that's a sport we love. That's a sport we watch, and it's all part of the sport.
I I would like to add one thing, Rod. Yes, I agree with you. This is what we want to see in racing, the close racing and this and that. But sometimes I don't know. FIA should chill because of it. Maybe sometimes the penalties are useless, I would say, but sometimes it is worthy, no doubt. Most of the time it is useless. For example, I would like to talk about the Q2 incident between Vettel and Alonso. I still believe Vettel was not at fault. It was other people's fault. Vettel was just there at the wrong place. I still believe that. Any what do you think?
I mean, yes, of course, it was the team's fault for not letting him know where Alonso was. But still, I mean, it doesn't make sense to find the team, because if they don't find the driver, if Vettel say, like, if Vettel impedes Alonso in the run, the person who is benefiting the most is Vettel himself. So you have to penalize him and not the team. But if you penalize the team, say $100,000 or something, and they pay it, what harm does that cause to Vettel? It doesn't cause any harm to Vettel. The thing that FIA is trying to do is, if you gain any advantage through impeding another driver, so you're gonna have to give that back. And the way you give that back is you go down 3 grid positions. That's what FIA were trying to do, and I think it's justified in a sense, because
Yeah, it's
penalizing the team
justified.
wouldn't help.
Yeah, penalizing the team wouldn't help. It's justified. A, because Vettel was, I mean, himself personally, I could feel through the radio that he was gutted, and he put his hand out of the car to show Alonso that he's sorry about it. And he was, I mean, I'd say,
Apologize.
yeah, he was apologizing, and he was even pissed at his engineer that he didn't tell him that Alonso was on a timed lap right behind him. Alonso went over the crash of turn 9 and nobody's there. But then, bam, Sebastian Vettel appears out of, I mean, not out of nowhere. Sebastian Vettel was right there. But when Sebastian Vettel actually went pushing onto the main straight, that's when Alonso lost out. And there were a few tweets and a few Instagram posts. I can't remember by which user, but I have read that the drivers that were ahead also should get the penalties, and that is, I guess, justified because Vettel got the penalty. The drivers that held Vettel up should also get the penalties. That's what I think.
Yeah, they kind of broke an unofficial gentleman's agreement, which was decided that they would not slow down in turn 9 and 10 to create a gap for a time space. They would slow down before, and they would carry a speed in turn 9 and 10 to start a flying lap. But that was official, like that was broken by many people. Lewis Hamilton overtook Vettel, Perez overtook Vettel, then they slowed down in front of them, which kind of Vettel missed a lap. He was right there, but Vettel missed a lap as well. And I think Q2, yes, he missed a lap in Q2, but that's now unnecessary.
Yeah, that's unnecessary. Moving on. Let's talk about the Mercedes' winless streak since 2016. I mean,
Can you repeat that because it sounded so well in my ears? Can you repeat that?
Mercedes' winless streak since 2016. Could it mean something for the championship fight? I think it could mean a lot. For the Drivers' Championship, it could mean a lot because Max Verstappen delivering, Sergio Perez delivering, that's the Constructor Championship set for Red Bull. If they deliver together and are on the podium regularly for the next 7 to 8 races till the end of the season, the constructors is set. But I mean,
They
I
could
don't.
wrap if Max and Sergio are on the podium, or maybe gathering most amount of points available on that weekend, they could wrap up the championship in Japan or something, 2 3 races prior to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. They could wrap up
Let's
the
not
championship.
let's not be ambitious right here, but yeah, let's see, let's see, and that Mercedes' winless streak also means that Lewis Hamilton's winning streak has been broken, and the Silverstone GP is coming, and we might see Lewis Hamilton win his 100th Grand Prix in Silverstone. It's a might, but let's see. Maybe Lewis has been
He
saving.
won.
He might. He
He
might.
won.
Wait, he
No, he
hasn't
didn't
reached
win.
his 100th till now?
No, no, no.
Yeah, I think he won. Like, no, wait a minute. Last year he won his 90. He last year he equaled the record, right? In
He equaled the record.
Germany,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Equal and broke
Then
it.
he equal also the 91, 92. I think he broke 100 wins, right?
No, he's on 98. He's on 98. So, since the sprint
This
quali
does
one
come as a
second,
big
just
shock.
yeah, that's very shocking. And I mean, with the sprint qualifying format right here, if Lewis Hamilton wins the sprint qualifying, he's starting on pole for the Grand Prix. If he wins the Grand Prix, he would win the 100th Grand Prix at his home race. That would be, I'd say, as
That
an
would be a
F1,
spectacular stat.
yeah, that would be very spectacular. That would be thrilling, I'd say. And as an F1 fan, that would give me goosebumps. That would give me goosebumps.
I'm the
Yeah,
odd
same,
one out.
same.
I don't want that happening. I'm the odd one out. I don't want that happening. At least on
No, I
Silverstone.
mean,
Okay.
any way to enjoy a sport, is not to have any. This is a philosophy I follow. Any way to enjoy a sport is not to have any favorite drivers or sports person. You just
Yeah,
go in
yeah.
there. You don't have to choose anyone. You just watch it, just for the fun of it. And so whoever wins, or if there's any drama, you feel every part of it. If someone wins, you feel the joy. If there's a drama on the last lap or something, you feel the pain. It's a better way, I think, to enjoy any sport. So I think if Lewis Hamilton were to win his 100th race at his home Grand Prix, at his home track, I think it would be a spectacular thing. And this might become one of those, statistics that just becomes impossible to break.
That might be,
Hey, let's not say that.
carved
Let's not say
carved
that.
in stones when Lewis Hamilton wins his 100th Grand Prix at his home race. That would be carved in stones, and I mean that would be just. I can imagine it. I don't know why. I can imagine
Exactly.
it.
Like winning your 100th race or winning a 200th race, that has been done. That statistic has been achieved numerous times. But winning your 100th, like, okay, this is even hard to describe. Your 100th win, not your 100th race, your 100th win will be at your home track. That is, I don't know. I mean, it felt impossible during Michael Schumacher's time that his record of 91 wins won't be ever broken. But then Hamilton came along and he broke it. So maybe we're saying that, oh, Lewis Hamilton's 100 or 100 plus record of wins probably won't be broken. But, maybe in the future, some other guy goes on a streak of championship and wins. I hope not. It makes the sport a bit boring, to be honest. But, you never know. I mean, if we could do
See,
it with couple like intervals and stuff, like, oh, he wins this year and then wins couple years later, then it would make a bit sense. But year after year, it's just it just
see,
hurts to watch as fans.
okay. I have a good point of view on this. See, if for example Vettel is winning the championship year after year, but every year we get something like 2012 season. We don't know what's happening in the season. That is, I would say, win-win for everyone.
And I
See,
think that's what these new regulations are trying to bring, right?
yeah,
Close racing.
Yeah, that's
I would
true.
see. I That would be a very big spectacle to watch, and especially on the television screen. If Lewis Hamilton wins 100 GP at his home, which is one of his best tracks. I mean, he has won there multiple times with four wheels, with three wheels. I don't, of course,
I mean,
but
David Croft and Martin Brundle will just light the commentary box on fire if that happens.
They
they
they they
would they
would they would jump out. They would jump out of the commentary box at the
Over
I
under
podium
the
can
track.
ceremony.
see.
At the podium ceremony, they would just be like spray the champagne all over us.
You remember that one time there was one spectator who was running in front of the cars coming. Remember that
2003 British
spectacle?
GP.
Yeah, yeah, that would be Martin Brundle. I can sure Lewis Hamilton. Oh my God, Lewis Hamilton, and woo, out of the commentary box.
So, Rod, did anything interesting happen in IndyCar this weekend?
Yes, Penske. Well, they say the third time is a charm. So Penske and Joseph Newgarden was finally on their third try was able to get a victory this season. This was their first season since 1999 that Penske has gone winless for so long. But after the third try, they finally got a victory at Mid Ohio. And another thing is, I mean, there was some it was a fairly straightforward race with not many activities happening, except for the first lap crash and the lap 4 crash between Dixon and Rossi. I'm sorry, Dixon and Will Power. Another thing is what I wanted to talk about is Santio Ferrucci. You guys remember him from F2 a couple years back?
How many years back? I don't remember because I started watching.
2018 or 19, I think. He had this incident. I think it was at Silverstone, where he deliberately crashed into his teammate, and his teammate was Arjun Maini, and it got him a lot of flack throughout the motorsport community. Like, how could someone do such a thing to their teammate? I mean, you'll find numerous videos of it on YouTube. He's not a very well-liked guy. I'll just say that. But he has been a part of RLL racing for this season for 4 races. And I'll say this, he has had top 10 finishes at each one of those races. I know he's not a well-liked guy. He has a horrible personality and everything, but he starts fairly back. I think he started somewhere like 22nd or 21st in this race, and he clawed back to, I think, P9. That's pretty interesting. He's a hated guy, and I get it, but that's still fairly a decent result. Top 4 finishes in every top 10 finishes in every 4 races he has done this season. So I think that's all there is to Indy this weekend. Romain Grosjean, the former Formula One driver, had a pretty good race as well. He started, I think, P18, and he clawed his way back to, I think, P7. Now, there were a few crashes on the way, but it doesn't matter. He clawed his way back. And I think that's about it. So I think you guys should move on with the introductions over chai.
All right, Rod. Thank you for the IndyCar information. And now we move on to introductions over chai. And today we have with us Aman Jasani introducing Maverick Vinales, the MotoGP rider.
Hello everyone, Inish here, and today on Introductions Over Chai, we are talking about Lando Norris. Now, as we all know, this weekend that we had the Austrian Grand Prix, Lando Norris proved yet again that he's a very, very promising driver. But his journey in Formula One started a couple of years back, which was early in 2017 when Norris was signed as a junior driver with McLaren. And later that same year, Norris tested for McLaren in a scheduled mid-season test. He also scored the second fastest lap in the second day of testing at Hungaroring. In late 2017, Norris became the official McLaren test and reserve driver for the 2018 season. Now, Norris was contracted to drive for McLaren for the 2019 Formula One World Championship, which was 2019 will be his very first year in Formula One, while partnering with Carlos Sainz Jr. And in his very first race, which was in Australia debut, he qualified 8th and finished the race in 12th position. At the opening race in Austria, Norris qualified in 4th place but was elevated to 3rd after a grid penalty for Lewis Hamilton. This happened in 2020 when he scored his very first podium. Hamilton was given a 5-second penalty because colliding with Alex Albon of Toro Rosso at the moment, and hence he was given a 5-second penalty, and the gap between Lando Norris and Hamilton was 4.078 at the time, and hence he was able to score, he was able to get a P3 at the point, which was his first debut in Formula One. Fast forwarding to 2021, Norris remained at McLaren for the 2021 season with Daniel Ricciardo replacing Carlos Sainz Jr. Now this season, as we all know, since the 2021 season has started, he has showed his signs of how promising a driver he is by winning more races, out-qualifying his teammate in almost all of the races, and it's pretty clear in this Austrian Grand Prix that how great of a driver he is. We can't wait to see how far he goes ahead, and in the right car, nobody can challenge him from being the world champion.
So thank you, Gaurish. Talking about Maverick Vinales, Maverick Vinales right now rides for Monster Energy Yamaha factory racing team right now, and he would be parting ways with Yamaha at the end of the year, which is 21. And currently, he has no other. He had a contract, but he cancelled that and looking for a new contract in MotoGP rider market. Talking about Maverick Vinales, he is our 2013 Moto3 champion, riding for the Bullinis BQR team, which is a Moto3 team, which I have no idea about it. But he won. He was good in 125cc. He would had a pace. He was mostly starting in the front row or top five always. Then he moved to 20. He moved in 2014 to Moto 2, where he won the Rider Rookie of the Year award for Moto 2 thing, and 3 wins, 9 podiums was good for Maverick Vinales. Then the start of his MotoGP career started with the returning Suzuki team to MotoGP. Um, Little history: Suzuki left MotoGP in 2006 or 7, I don't remember, but they left MotoGP. And they had a return in 2015. Until now, they are in MotoGP. So Maverick Vinales joined MotoGP under the leadership of Davide Brivio, which right now is with Alpine F1 racing team. So he was partnered with then Aleix Espargaro, one of his good friend. He won his first MotoGP race, I think, at Silverstone, White Silverstone, which was a good race, and the 2015 season of MotoGP was quite competitive. If you guys have any idea about MotoGP thing, so Vinales was there. Vinales won, I think, 2 or 3 races in 2015, and then he was there on the podiums. He gave Suzuki their first win after their return as well. In 20 wait 60 in 2018, I believe in 2018, I believe he joined Yamaha alongside Rossi. He's still in Yamaha, but right now there's something wrong with him and Yamaha, and they have parted ways. And that's about it for Maverick Vinales.
All right. Thank you, Man and Nish, for the introductions. And I guess this wraps up episode 4. And thank you, guys. Stay tuned for more and just be safe out there.